And this is Gourmet Geeks.
Listen up, educators. Are you looking to take your classroom to the next level? The technological shift in education is happening right now. If you're looking to integrate technology into your classroom, you're in the right place. Welcome to Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick.
Well, welcome back to another Shifting Our Schools. I hope you enjoyed that intro this week. And if you understand what Gourmet Geeks is, then I'm afraid that you're probably a stalker. That was a fantastic opening. It was so good. That was my wife and Amanda DeCardi doing the Gourmet Geeks intro. And if you don't know what Gourmet Geeks is, well, then you're in for a surprise. Gourmet Geeks is actually a cooking show that Andy and Torris, Amanda and my wife put together back in 2007 and 2008. And back in 2007, 2008, we were actually working in China together, in Shanghai together. And the way it came about was Twitter was brand new in 2007. And my wife was taking Chinese lessons at night. And the nights that she would take Chinese lessons, I would actually cook dinner. And I started... again, Twitter was brand new. So I started, as I was cooking dinner, putting out on Twitter what I was cooking for dinner and the ingredients I was using. And I was taking photos and uploading photos to show people of what I was creating for dinner that night. And somebody, and I don't even remember who at this point, I'll have to go back and look at my Twitter stream. But at some point, somebody said, "Hey, this looks really delicious. You should have a cooking show." And if you know anything about me, you know you don't say things like that, because what you end up with is a cooking show. And I actually went to Andy Torris, who at the time was, I think he was either still the elementary school principal or he might have moved into a deputy director role at that time. I can't remember exactly what his role was. But I went to Andy and said, "Hey, what if once a month, twice a month, we got together and we had a cooking show where we taught geeks to cook?" And that is where the show Gourmet Geeks came to be. We had a domain name, and there was no live streaming back in the day for Facebook. Facebook wasn't even actually public yet. Twitter's only a year old. YouTube is only 2-3 years old at this point. So there's no real way to live stream except for a little startup called Ustream.tv, who is still around today. And so we would set this up, and I wish you could be able to be there to see it. We had such a great time reminiscing about this setup. So you have to imagine we're in Andy and Amanda's house in China. And the only way we could get this to work, because of the technology at the time, is we had a digital video camera on a tripod, and we had the tripod on top of their kitchen table to get the angle into the kitchen. And so here's this video camera on a tripod that is facing the kitchen. And then, of course, it had to be connected, wired to a laptop. So Amanda DeCardi's job was to run the laptop. So she ran the Twitter stream. We had a Twitter account, Gourmet Geeks. And then also Ustream TV came with running comments, live comments. So people could watch us live and then also leave comments. And so Amanda ran the technology side of things. My wife would basically play babysitter, and Amanda and Andy had two daughters, or have two daughters, and we just got to hang out with them again when we were in China last week. At the time, I think they were maybe 1 year old and 3 years old, and so my wife's job was to actually babysit the kids. She once in a while the kids got away, so there's quite a few times the kids ended up in the shots, would run over to hug their dad, or Andy would be holding one of the kids. Their youngest daughter, Amelia, doesn't even remember Gourmet Geeks at the time, but it was an incredible time to just be trying stuff. And I think that's what I remember most about 2007, 2008, is we were trying everything. We started this podcast, Shifting Our Schools was started in 2007. Andy Torris and I did another podcast for the school where, when he was the elementary school principal, we bought some equipment at the school, and we actually had a weekly podcast for parents where Andy would update parents on the happenings of the school. He would walk around and interview kids. And we actually had a podcast channel for the elementary school, which I don't find happening today. And we were doing this in 2007. And then we had this cooking show. We had somewhere between 10 and 15 people that would watch us live because we were doing this about between 7 and 8 o'clock at night. It was early morning here in the States. And so we had a lot of people that were watching while they were eating breakfast. And we were just playing with all of this technology back in the day. And it's crazy to think what that would be or how we would set that up today with things like YouTube Live, where now you can go to YouTube and with one click of a button, you're on a platform that has millions and millions, if not billions of users. And it's just how easy it would be today and how little we're taking advantage of that at schools. And here we were, 10 years ago when all of this technology was new and we were making it work. We were finding ways to reach out, to explore some of the things that we could do with technology. And that's really what this, I think, more than anything, that's what today's session is about. Is I actually, just last week, Andy invited me back into China. He is now the head of a school called Avenues, which is a for-profit school that started in New York, and then they opened up their second campus in Sao Paulo. And just a fantastic school looking at doing learning differently in the 21st century. And that's really what I love. And I think for me, knowing where Andy's been with all of this exploration with me back in the day, we were trying all kinds of crazy stuff, back in the early 2000s when Web 2.0 had just come out. And to see him now be the head of a school who is very progressive in their thinking of what does it mean to educate children for their future, not our past, is so powerful. And I'm so excited that, last week, my wife and I got to go back. We got to hang out with their daughters. We got to hang out with them and reminisce about all this amazing stuff we were doing over 10 years ago and where that has led us to today in education, where I am now consulting full-time with this, working with school districts, and where he is being the head of a school, and we're all living our passions. And even Amanda, his wife, is now a consultant. She travels around helping schools with assessment and what does it mean to formative and summatively assess kids. And she does a lot of work around that as well. So we're all living our passion, and it's so great to go back and think about how far we've come and where all this stuff started. This podcasting stuff's been around for a long time, and I love doing it. I can't believe I've been doing this for 10 plus years. The other thing is just, the way we live today. I mean, here I am in Moses Lake, Washington, which is in the middle of the state, roughly 3 hours from Seattle. And yet 48 hours ago, I was in Hong Kong. And to me, that's just mind blowing to think that how small of a world do we live in? That 48 hours, I can literally fly across the Pacific, get in a car, and be in a small town in America. It's just an incredible time period that we find ourselves in, and we've got to take advantage of this for our students. We've got to understand that all the power to do all of this is out there. I mean, we were live streaming video over 10 years ago. Where is that in your classroom? We're talking about a generation that is media first. They are a YouTube generation. Where are we using video with them? Where are we taking all of this stuff now that is not new, that's been around for so long, and applying that in our classrooms in really creative ways, getting kids to create some amazing content? And so I hope you enjoyed today's episode. It is Andy Torris and I talking about his school, some of the visions that he has now in 2019 for education. We dig into a little bit of what does he look for in a teacher and how has that changed over the years, which I think is a great insight from a head of school who's actually hiring people. I apologize a little bit for the audio. We were actually recording this while over dinner. And we were sitting outside, and all of a sudden, a thunderstorm literally came out of nowhere. So if it hears like there's thunder and lightning, and it's raining, and there's wind, that's because that's exactly what happened. And we actually had to pause the recording and head inside the restaurant and finish up the recording in there. So if you feel like you're in a restaurant with us, that's probably because you were in a restaurant with us. But I hope you appreciate this show of Andy and I talking about his new school called Avenues, and you can find out more at avenues.org. Just an incredible school, and just us talking about where education has gone and where education is headed. And so enjoy the show. And until next time, I'll see you on the network. All right, well, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. I'm so excited to be here with my good friends, Andy and Amanda. And if you heard Amanda and my wife, Dania, at the beginning of this, and you know what Gourmet Geeks is, you are definitely a longtime listener. And so we're so excited to have you around. And someday when you find me, you're going to have to ask about Gourmet Geeks if you listen to this episode, because it was a long time coming. But I'm here with my good Gourmet Geeks friend, Andy Torris. Hi, Andy.
Hey, how are you?
Good. It's good to have you back. Andy's been on the show a lot. Amanda, his wife, was on the show back in the day. You can go back and find those episodes from 2007, 2008, or all episodes before episode 30. Were done back then. But I'm here in Shenzhen, China with Andy, who is, what is your official title? Head of school?
I'm a head of school, yes.
Of Avenues, right?
Avenues, the World School, Shenzhen, yes.
There we go. And let's talk a little bit about the school, because the school has a different approach. The idea of being a world school is something very specific.
Yeah, I think everyone should understand that as a world school, we perceive our impression on the local community to be from the inside out instead of from the outside in.
Oh, cool.
Our curriculum brings a framework in which we embrace the local context, the local curriculum, and then we help our students to understand themselves and their community, and then their school, and then the greater part of their country, and then the world themselves. And wow, Jeff, it's really starting to storm here.
We're getting really, I don't know if you can hear this, but it's really starting to storm here. We might have to.
Good thing we're under cover here.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay.
So anyway, I think that it's really important for families to understand that as a global school, we have an imperative to make sure that our kids can and will be part of a global community, but also integral part of their local community.
I love that. That's so good. All right, so after that brief, literally storm closure, we had to run inside here.
Impressive.
It was very impressive. It just came out of nowhere on us. So this is the third campus for Avenues, correct? You have one in New York.
Officially, yes. Although it's tough to say that because we also have an online presence,
cool.
Avenues Online. So
can kids take the whole thing online, or is it for students at the school?
You can do an entire Avenues education from middle grades up.
Yeah.
We don't have an elementary program for Avenues at this point. But it was intended to service the Avenues families who are mobile, who may be in positions or places where Avenues education is not available, but they wish to continue that, and so it's a good opportunity for a few families right now. We're hoping to expand that moving forward.
That's very cool. So we've been talking about shifting our schools for a long time. You've been on this podcast since it started back in 2007.
Yep.
And what have you seen? I mean, we're talking, from the time this podcast started, and you were one of our first guests on this podcast over 10 years ago now. We're talking when this podcast started, the iPhone, literally, we started the podcast before the iPhone came out, even though it was the same year. And just what we've seen technology-wise and the shifting of the educational scene, what have you noticed from a leadership perspective? Just, leading schools through this incredible shift that we see ourselves in.
Well, I'm going to talk about my current context because I think that's one that is important to me right now, and I can talk about a few other schools, I suppose, along the way. But ultimately, with Avenues, technology is an important part of what we do at our school, but it is not front and center. It is just who we are. We tell our community we are an Apple Distinguished School, but I think the important part about that is that Apple products are not, a ubiquitous part of what we do every day. Right. They are just sort of, kind of like the water we swim in. Technology is, there. We use it when necessary, and so thus when we're building units of study, we look at technology as a very extremely available tool. Where back in the day, when you and I first started, we had to search, we had to be creative, we had to think about it, and now, I put a few teachers in the room, we start talking about it, and we don't have to say, well, so how's technology going to be used? They've already thought through how specific pieces of software or web apps or whatever it may be, hardware, iPads, cameras, phones, computers, laptops, those are just kind of part of what we do. We don't think about it anymore. They're paper and pencil. They're water, right?
Yeah.
We're swimming in them.
Yeah.
And what makes me smile is when a teacher who I don't ever consider to be super geeky just brings up an app that they've used and it's like, yeah, well, you know, we can use this or we can use that, and I'm not gonna say specific ones because I think there's so many of them and they're all very important.
Yeah, right.
It's just whatever works at the time.
Yeah.
I've always also noticed teachers coming straight into our programs that we've hired, they have a toolkit that they just go to.
Yeah.
And they know them, they use them, and when they bring them up at the table with other teachers, the teachers sort of shrug and nod their head and off they go.
Yeah.
And gosh, I remember when we would bring up, oh my gosh, like
we were teaching teachers Dreamweaver.
A Dreamweaver, or you know, back way before even probably you were teaching. Like I remember HyperCard.
Yeah.
You know, where we were like teaching teachers how to help students to think through logic.
Yeah.
And presentation, and little 8-inch Mac screens.
Yeah.
You know, I it makes me happy.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of complications that come along with that, but we don't worry about it, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just us. And my school sources for it, resources for it, like we would do for chalkboards and pencils and everything else. It's not a big deal anymore for us.
Yeah. How has, through the years, how has your hiring, what do you look for in hiring a teacher now that you might not have looked at, or has that changed? Has that changed at all through this? Like, are you hiring a different type of teacher for your school because of tech, or the mindset, or the ability to try something on? Is that something that, have you noticed a change in teachers that way, or are you looking for a different teacher that way?
Well, I'm not a young guy anymore. I've been around a while, and I hate to say it, but people who are from my generation, I heard you speak today about millennials and those who are older.
Yeah. The boomers and Gen Xers.
Yes. Yeah. Well, as a boomer, and I was the only boomer in the room, by the way, today.
I know. I was going to make fun of you, but I decided not to.
Thank you. But I would say that I'm very cognizant of the generation with whom I'm interviewing at the time. I don't have any problem hiring people in their 50s.
Yeah.
But if you're my age, I'm going to drill down a little bit harder on your technology savvy.
Interesting.
Even to the point, if you're born, if I say that you're probably in your mid to late 40s, I'm going to ask a few more questions, knowing your educational background. And so I spent more time now drilling down on educational history of the individual. Say, where'd you go to school? What'd you do when you were in school?
Yeah.
What were your interests?
Yeah.
And that career history from a life history perspective is more important to me now than it used to be before, because everybody there was more context to it.
Yeah.
Now for us, there's less context.
Right.
So people are coming from different generations, and things have changed so rapidly.
Yeah.
So that life history, that career history means more now. And so because of that knowledge of where I'm coming from and where they're coming from means more. And then I ask different questions depending on your station in life, if you will. I think that's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
And where you came from and what you tell me as far as your own educational background is. Because everybody needs to be ready to use tech. That's just that, it's an expectation. Our parents expect it. Our students expect it.
And when you're starting, like you said, you're starting a new school where this is just what we do. There has to be an expectation of this is just how you teach, or this is, you just know how this goes.
Well, it just know how it goes, and again, I'll say it again. It's like it's the water in which we are swimming.
Yeah.
We don't know it's there. We're just breathing it in and out. It's just who we are, and I love my teachers currently. They use tech flawlessly, seamlessly. It's not a big deal. If something doesn't work, they kill themselves to fix it themselves. They don't immediately call the tech guy to come rescue them.
Yeah.
And then if they really come to the end of their rope and they're really super frustrated, then probably they can't fix it themselves.
Yeah.
They really can't.
Then something's really wrong.
Then something really is wrong. Right. Even today, me.
Yeah.
Why is the wireless not working?
Yeah.
I tried every password and then I go in and then they've changed the password to something crazy.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you not tell us that? That was that kind of thing. So, it's that kind of stuff that's really very, very important to us is teachers who are adaptable, flexible, are learners, they're creative, they're collaborative, all those valued behaviors that are avenues make for a great tech teacher, but tech isn't the focus anymore. We don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's just us. It's an expectation.
Yeah. That's great, because I hope there are more and more schools that are getting there, and more leaders like yourself who just understand that needs to be, it should be just an expectation at this point of teachers. One of the things that I'm struggling with is still having teachers who, during trainings and stuff, will come out and actually say, well, I'm just not good at tech. And I have a hard time with that in 2019.
I have no tolerance for it.
Yeah.
I don't even comprehend it. Frankly.
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that, because I have a hard time with it.
Yeah, it's like, give me a break.
Yeah.
Like, how do you operate your life now?
Yeah.
And then, interestingly enough, if you hear someone who says that, I often say to them, so what do you mean by that? I see a phone in your hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want a laptop?
Yeah. Online banking?
Do you yeah, right. How do you do your banking?
Yeah.
What are your credit cards? Somebody from the United States, I would say that frankly, your own self-being is pretty dependent on the internet.
Yeah.
You come to a country like China, and we live off our cell phones.
Yeah, this place is
everything
crazy.
Everything is on our cell phone.
Yeah.
And parents don't even want to answer our emails. They expect you to send them a WeChat to let them know you sent them an email.
Yeah. Different culture.
So it's interesting. But once you dig in a little bit, people, they think they are expected to do deeply embedded, highly technical units in their classrooms.
Yeah.
And then after kind of being walked through that a little bit, they understand that maybe they already have those capabilities, but they don't trust themselves enough to sort of let go of the control to their kids.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's a bigger issue than I'm not good
It's a
at tech.
mindset.
Yeah,
it's a mindset
absolutely.
and an understanding of the role of technology in classrooms. Because back in the day, maybe when I was in school, maybe when you were in school, we went off to a computer lab.
Yeah, I was a tech teacher.
Right, yeah. I remember that. I think I gave you that job.
Yeah, you did.
One of my favorite memories, actually, as a learner, as a student in college and in high school, was taking I'm going to make everyone shocked on this. 1981, I took a programming class.
Yeah.
So we had a TRS 80 computers in our, and my dad was the high school principal, and we had like 9 in a lab. It was like a huge expense. It probably leveraged probably a large part of his budget for high school. And we learned BASIC. We learned to program in BASIC, and I remember getting so deeply embedded in the idea of developing a computer program. I can't even remember what it was about. It was something probably very simple right now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about that. It was about me thinking through the logic. And I remember sitting in my living room after school one night and talking with my mom. And all of a sudden I looked up and went, oh my gosh, I've got it. I've got the solution. I know how to solve the problem. I know how to make the program work.
Yeah.
And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, I know the code to make that work. I know how to make that solution work. And she was like, okay. And she started, well, that's great, Andy, and sort of patted me on the back. And I got up from work, from the couch, and I was a junior, maybe a sophomore in high school, I can't remember. And we lived a block from the high school. Yeah. And I knew my dad was still at school. Yeah. And I got up and walked to the high school, found him, and made him let me into the high school computer lab, where I loaded a cassette tape with my computer program.
Of course.
and load it up into the computer and solve the problem because I had access. I was lucky. I had access. And I remember that flow and that feeling in my head like, oh my gosh, I got the solution. It's so right here, right in the front of me. Yeah. And then over and over again over the years, I've had similar experiences with technology where I've been trying to solve a problem, I couldn't figure it out, Lego logo and logo, and then I was, doing some simple programming, some C++, and then I'm learning how to use spreadsheets and so on, and like that feeling in your head when you really like catch something on and you know it after failure after failure after failure after failure, and it still sort of motivates me to find that again.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, so it's like that's what I want for the kids in the classrooms, but it's different now because they're solving different kinds of problems.
Yeah,
and honestly, Jeff, this is what our school's about. It's not about solving these kind of problems, which mean nothing.
Right.
Our school is about solving problems that mean something for the world. And so at Avenues, we push kids to think about and ask hard questions about how they can make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And the thing is, kids nowadays, thanks to the power of the internet, thanks to the power of technology, thanks to great teachers who can motivate them and put them in a place where they can do it, they can solve worldwide problems sitting in their bedrooms at night.
Yeah, I know.
By motivating millions of people, or by doing great research, or by connecting to researchers, or by contributing to the greater good in with data or whatever the case may be, and that makes me super happy. Yeah. And this is why I joined this organization, because we make kids ask those questions. Yeah. Our goal is to create worldwide global citizens who can solve global problems. Yeah. That's what we're doing in this organization, and guess what? We have examples over and over again where kids are doing that work. Yeah. It's not aspirational. We have solid examples. Over and over again.
Yeah. That's so good. And I think, to your point, it's just what an incredible time. I can't imagine being a student today and having the accessibility and being able to go to a school like that where you have the power and empowering kids to do that kind of work. That is,
Well, I openly invite anyone who's listening to, make an appointment, come in, spend some time with our students on our New York campus, or spend our time with our students on Sao Paulo. We're going to have students in our campus in Shenzhen here in May and June, where we've got 20 kids coming in from New York and Sao Paulo, and they're charged with a series of technical challenges and problems, but at the end, they will build some version of a 3D printer. Yeah. The guys I've been working with and talking with, they're talking about, well, we can make a room-size 3D printer where they can, build things, and they're like doing wires around the room, and they're trying to strategize how that's going to look. To something like, they're going to build pocket watches or wallets or whatever the case may be. They need to solve a problem. So it comes from a design challenge approach.
Perspective,
And the first thing thing is like, well, so what do people need? What's the empathetic approach to it? What are people looking for? Masters. They're so Renaissance, teachers. They're masters of all. They're amazing, super smart. And the first thing they said was, so if we ask the 2-year-olds in a small world classroom what they need, what would they tell us? If a 2-year-old could really talk, what would they tell you they needed? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm not 2. But let's think through that a little bit. Yeah. And so I challenged the classroom teachers to look at the world through a 2-year-old's eyes and what would make their life easier or better in some way, or a tool to help them learn in different ways. And so we've got a really hot brainstorm list going on right now of different ideas. And then we're going to give that to the Mastery Academy kids. The kids are coming into Shenzhen saying, so here's what we thought 2-year-olds would say. Cool. What can you do for them? Cool. What can you make for them? And that's their first project. That's cool. And then we'll grow from there. Yeah, that's great. The ultimate end goal on that, though, is we want them to create a 3D printer that serves a larger purpose and a positive purpose. Yeah. Instead of something there's a lot of negative stuff in the world. Yeah. And we need to turn these kids' minds around to see the world in a positive way. Yeah.
I love that, and I'll encourage everybody listening, if you want to learn more about Avenues, you can go to avenues.org, is the website for the school. And again, campuses in New York, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and then here in Shenzhen, China is the third of many to come.
And Avenues online.
Online, that's right.
AON.avenues.org.
All right. And we'll make sure all the links are in the show notes, as always. Thank you for letting me interrupt your dinner to do this. I appreciate it. It's good to be back with our friends. So thank you.
Cheers, man.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit sospodcast.org, facebook.com/Jeff Udick, and on Twitter @JUdick. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Shifting Our Schools.